Good morning, Kim. It's so good to have you here on Holly's Hot Wedding Tips. How long have you been a reverend?
I have been a Reverend since 2009, so coming up about 6 years now.
Amazing. What inspired you to be a reverend?
I was asked by a friend of mine to perform their wedding, and after thinking long and hard about it, because somebody's special day is not something that you want to mess up, I thought I would actually do a good job. So I agreed to do that, and then once I realized that I really enjoyed it, I kind of ran out of friends to marry, so I started hitting up strangers. So that's how I became an officiant.
That's amazing. What are the best tips that you have for brides and grooms that they really need to know?
In selecting an officiant, I think it's really important that they connect with the person that's going to marry them. It's very important to find somebody who shares your sense of humor, who really understands you and your relationship. Somebody who will make it personal to you. And I also think it's very important to like the ceremony that they're going to do.
Right.
To include all the things that you want in the ceremony.
It makes perfect sense, because I know with certain religions, if you don't follow their rules, you can't have your ceremony. So I see a lot of brides and grooms recently opting to do their ceremony their way and then going back and having an official one later.
Actually, with a professional wedding officiant, you don't have to go back and do a legal one later.
Oh, not the legal, the one for a church or a synagogue.
The church one. I also find a lot of couples who can't be married in their church, for example, couples who've been divorced with a Catholic church, come to me and other professional officiants and ask us if we can incorporate a lot of their traditions and religious elements. And I've done a lot of Catholic light wedding ceremonies.
Really?
Yes.
How fun.
I've done a lot of interfaith wedding ceremonies where perhaps one partner is Jewish and the other one is Christian.
Right.
So combining elements of the two religions is also another fun way.
Right. So that the families feel included and that it doesn't, so it feels like what they're used to for their traditional weddings in their faith and their beliefs.
And in their chosen location. So.
Right. How amazing is that? That is great. What don't couples know about officiants that they need to know?
There is a great difference in the type of officiants. And you do get what you pay for. You can hire an officiant for very little money, but you may not get a lot of say in what the officiant actually performs at the ceremony. They may just turn up and say whatever they like.
Right.
Other professional officiants take their job very seriously. For instance, I belong to a National Association of Wedding Officiants.
Really? There's a national association.
Yes.
How phenomenal.
There is. So we have a professional association where we can share ideas, ask for help with research and all sorts of other things. So professional officiants do vary greatly in their skill set and their, I want to say, ability to perform. Because you really are an integral part of somebody's wedding day. And if you're boring or you're not engaged with the guests and the couple, it can be a very long ceremony, even if it's only 10 minutes.
Right. That makes perfect sense to me. What questions should couples be asking that they don't know to ask?
I think they should ask whether or not the officiant will allow them to edit the ceremony once they're done. One of the things that I've heard from couples is they're very afraid that they're not going to like the end result, or that they feel that they're losing control of their ceremony.
Right.
So a good officiant will allow a couple to have final say, or at least, look at the draft before the ceremony begins. So that's a very important thing. To be able to have final edit is a very good thing to ask. To ask what the professional officiant will be wearing.
Well, there's a good question.
Very interesting one. If the couple wants me to wear a robe, I give them the choice of a black or a white one. But I make my own stoles. That's the little bit that goes around the neck. So quite often I can color coordinate with a couple's theme, colour scheme.
Oh, how fun.
And so they can send me a swatch of fabric, and I will actually go down to Joann's and match it and sew one
good.
just for them. If I'm asked to wear just street clothes, for example, then I try to wear basic black.
Right.
So that I'm not wearing a bright pattern or a bright colour that will interfere or take the focus away in photographs. Because in the ceremony there's a lot of, about this much of the three of us.
Right.
So
right.
if I'm wearing something very distracting, then the attention comes away from their faces.
Right. Yeah, and you want to see that bride and groom. They are so the center of the entire
Exactly.
That is great. What's your best piece of advice for couples planning their wedding?
To stop once in a while, stop planning your wedding and just enjoy each other. Make sure to still date. Don't make every conversation about the wedding. I think it's very easy to get caught up in all the to-dos and must-dos and discussions about budgets and colour schemes and napkins. So I think it's really important once in a while to just stop and remember to be a couple and remember to be in love.
Oh, how fun. That is a great suggestion, because I know as it gets closer to the wedding, it gets more insane and they lose time together.
Yes,
Very
much.
difficult. Yes. What is the most unusual wedding you've ever done?
I would say that my most unusual wedding was also my most fun wedding.
Really? Oh, let's
Really.
hear about this.
I was asked by a couple to do a wedding with a green colour scheme, a spring theme, Viking style.
Viking? What is Viking style?
In the manner of how Vikings used to get married. And historically, we carry a lot of the Viking wedding traditions through. Yes,
what are the Viking wedding traditions?
Well, for instance, one of the biggest ones is from King Alfred, who decreed that no woman should get married against her will. Now, in the British Isles, for example, women were property, so you didn't have a say whether your father married you off.
And that's why he escorted you down the aisle and made sure the deal was sealed. Yeah.
Exactly. So it was the Vikings that introduced asking the woman if she took the man to be her husband.
Really?
Yes.
How interesting.
So that is a big. Vikings were very big on women's lips. So.
I had no idea. That's fascinating.
And then it was their tradition of hand fasting again that came through to the Western Europeans, to where we get the expression "tied the knot" from.
Right.
They would actually have their hands wrapped together.
Yeah.
Yes. So a lot of these traditions still survive in ways.
Kidding. What else? This is fascinating.
After the hand fasting, after the woman and man were married, they would have a symbolic meal as husband and wife. So typically cake, some sort of sweetened oat cake, and a cup of ale, and they would share that. So again, we still see this today with the wedding cake. When the couple feeds each other wedding cake, that is a throwback to that tradition.
I had no idea. How fun. Viking wedding tips. How great.
But of course, there's not a lot written about Viking weddings, so I had to do a lot of research from some very dry historical paper.
Really? How interesting is that? So fun. So did they have other Viking things, or just the Viking traditions and a traditional wedding?
Well, not quite. We had the nature theme spring, the green colour scheme, a request to wear some funky boots. And then we had a presentation of a sword. So in Viking tradition, the bride-to-be would present her husband-to-be with a sword, indicating that he was now protector of the household. And he in return would provide her with a set of keys to the household to indicate that she was now in charge of the house. Well, the couple decided, yes, the presentation of the sword was great, but not keys. So we did instead a presentation of the bouquet. So each flower had a meaning. And so that was, his gift to his bride, was all the flowers that represented the things that he loved about her. It was really, really neat. And then we had the hand fasting with 7 different colours.
Wow.
And then we had the cakes and ale ceremony to follow. So it was very unusual, but it was very much them. And I'm very much looking forward to marrying the bride's brother and his fiancé.
Are they going to do this?
This year.
This is good.
So,
how fun. You get to repeat those amazing traditions. How great is that? What other odd traditions do you come across as a reverend?
Well, there only odd if you haven't come across them
Right,
before, but
right.
for a lot of couples, things that they bring with them from their countries and from their religions and their cultures. So I've incorporated all sorts of different traditions, from coins to lassos, swords and
Lassos, which country,
there's I believe, and I may be wrong, I believe it was a Mexican tradition
Really?
that the couple wanted to include, where they had a lasso. Then there has been, of course, Jewish traditions of glasses,
Right.
breaking glasses. And then a lot of couples want to include things that are representative of them. So unity ceremonies
Right.
are a great way for couples to incorporate their personalities and their interests.
Uh-huh.
So I've done everything from an ice cream sundae ceremony
Wow.
to fish tank ceremonies.
Fish tank, my
Fish tank
goodness. Now, I've
ceremonies.
seen the ring fished out of fish eggs before, but never a fish tank.
Well, it's kind of like the sand ceremony. So we had the fish tank on the table, and one dad put in the gravel in the bottom, and then both of the mums put in a little house and a little plant, and then the other dad filled it up with water, and then the bride and the groom put the fish in. So it was absolutely adorable. So
fun.
unity ceremonies there are a lot of traditional ceremonies, the candle and the sand, but there are a lot of really great ways to celebrate. I've had couples make signature cocktails.
Oh, fun.
Yes. So there really is no limit. Just whatever you can imagine, then we can always incorporate it.
Well, excellent. This was truly fascinating. Thank you so much, Kim.
It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.